Assalamu alaikum. I'm Ayman Taleb, and you're watching the show about justice. Tonight's guest is Abdullah al Mamun, Deputy Executive Director of Muslim Legal Fund of America, MLFA. Abdullah al Mamun was born in Bangladesh, raised in New York City, and now lives in Dallas with his wife and three young boys. He has a bachelor's degree in Middle Eastern Studies and Business Administration from Fordham University, and a master's degree in Graphics Communication Management and Technology from New York University. He served as the National Youth Director for Muslim Ummah of North America, MUNA, for 6 years. Abdullah Mamoon worked in broadcast and advertising for 8 years with Fox News, CNN, and Comedy Central's The Daily Show. He has developed consulting relationships with ISNA, ICNA, Islamic Relief, Zakah Foundation, and other national Islamic organizations. Today, Abdullah Mamoon visits Muslim communities throughout the U.S., delivering khutbahs and educational workshops. Here at the show about justice, we believe that the U.S. Constitution applies to American Muslims too. We should not fear exercising our rights. We should not be suspected or treated differently because of our faith, ethnicity, or national origin. We don't want special treatment. We want equal treatment. Nothing more, nothing less. Abdullah Mamoon joins us tonight from Dallas, Texas. Welcome, Brother Abdullah.
Thank you, Brother Ayman. I probably should have gotten a review from you on how you're going to approach this and introduce me. I
Uh,
really appreciate the flattering and appreciate you reading the bio,
yeah,
although I'm being very sarcastic about that.
that's all right.
But thank you so much. I'm really excited to be on this program.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, to the audience, we usually meet each other on a daily basis or every other day, but it has been almost 5 days that we haven't seen each other. So
Mhm.
this program is as live as it can get. So I'm very excited about tonight's special program. So thank you, Eamon.
Of course. So let's jump into it. Tonight is a special night. It is election night here in the United States of America. Let's bring it, as home as it can for us. Why is it important for Muslims in America to vote?
Well, there are two reasons. Number one is because it is their constitutional right to exercise this ability to vote. And when you exercise your right, you are basically saying you have a say in the way this country is going to be directed. This is 2020 elections. What does that matter? Well, this is census year. So whoever you vote in this year, they're going to be actually setting up your districts. So in the last 10 years, we've been talking about gerrymandering. We've been talking about the various different districting that has been happening across the country, where we've said, hey, look, in other parts of the world, people are rigging the elections. In this part of the world, people are setting it up to say that these are going to be my voters and these are going to be my voters. Well, this election cycle is going to dictate how our next 10 years are going to be. So that's number one. Number two is that from a religious perspective, we have the responsibility to speak truth to power. We have the responsibility to fulfill our responsibility because, subhanAllah, brothers and sisters that are watching throughout the world, people are hoping to say, you know what, this is what we want from America, or this is what we need from America.
Mhm.
Whether you want to agree or not, but the fact is, America is a superpower. The United States of America is a superpower. And whatever decisions that we make here, it impacts the rest of the world. Even though we may not have the control to do something here in America, but we are electing those individuals that have control. And that is happening tonight or through this election cycle. Actually, no, it is happening tonight, inshallah ta'ala. So, Amen. Okay. One other thing that I would like to encourage you all to do is right now in Dallas, it's about 5 p.m. 5:06 p.m. If you're in the East Coast, you got another 2 hours or maybe 2.5 hours, depending on which city you're in. Please, if you have not voted, go out and vote because it matters. And one of the reasons why it matters is because regardless of who you vote for, your name will be counted, or especially if you are in a particular city or a particular borough or a particular town, the elected officials will look and say, how many people actually went out and voted? How many people actually represented themselves? And when you look at those numbers, that's how your funding gets determined, making sure that you have enough funding for schools, enough funding for various different projects that you may need in your community. So, especially with our tax and the way our communities are structured, oftentimes what happens is that we look at our schools and say, hey, why is my school, or why are my children not getting enough education? Why are my children not getting enough funding? So one of the reasons is because we didn't get the right people in office.
Right. That's a lot of excellent points. You mentioned the census. You mentioned a specific example about school funding. Keeping it local, which brings me to my next issue. The next question I want to ask you, Abdullah, is what steps can American Muslims take to make our issues addressed by elected officials? You spent some time talking about voting. That is the first step, that voting is making our community count, making the individually as well as a community, making us count. What steps can be done after that to make sure that our issues are addressed by elected officials?
Well, holding their feet to the fire. That's one of the best ways, meaning
Hmm.
that you call them, you write them, you visit them. Um, we This year we haven't done it, but last year USCMO, United Council for Muslim, USCMO, United Council of Muslim Organizations,
Hmm.
they hold an annual what is that term? I slipped my it slipped my mind. Where you go visit your representatives. CARE does that as well on the local level, and that's just from an organizational perspective. But from
Hmm.
an individual or from a community perspective, what you should be doing is making sure whatever projects that you have in your
Hmm.
community, you get involved.
Right.
One of the things that I would encourage you to do is, if you have an HOA, if you have a community board, if you have a PTA, obviously, if you have children and they're in school, there's a PTA for you to get involved in all those local levels. And when you get involved, you're going to start now joining the meetings. And when you
Hmm.
join the meetings, when an issue comes up that is perhaps Islamophobic, or issue comes up where it's anti-Muslim or anti-Islam, and if you just stand there and ask this question, hey, the decision that you're making, are you fully aware what it means to me, my community, and what it means to my, again, to me? Many times, our fellow Americans are not aware. And when we speak up in those moments, it makes the difference.
No, absolutely. And having that involvement at the community level, that's really where it starts, right? The saying goes, all politics are local, right? So as much attention is given and as much importance is given to the presidential ticket, and the congressional ticket and the Senate ticket, it really comes down to who's on your local school boards, who's on either the railroad commissioner, the tax commissioner, all these different elected officials. These are elected officials, so they are supposed to be representing what the people want, and the way that gets voiced is when citizens are addressing their concerns. So a lot of excellent points you made there, Brother Abdullah. And one thing I also want to add is that if these candidates, or excuse me, these elected officials, if they do what we ask, then we would also campaign for them in the next election. And if they don't, we fire them by voting them out of office. It's just.
Well, I think campaigning for them is more of, because as you've said it, as you alluded to it, which is
Mm.
that because they are aligned with our opinions, we
Mm.
are going to be campaigning for them. We're going to be raising money for them. We're going to be inviting them to our homes and doing fundraisers. One thing that we often forget, one of your previous guests on the show, is the reason why George W. Bush won. And many people don't know that the Muslims actually got him elected the first time around. He was the better candidate in many of our opinions. Again, not MLFA's opinion, but again, many of our opinions when it came to the first time around. And in fact, the Muslim vote is the one that got him in. Historically speaking, even in, especially in this election speaking, you have Muslims that have contributed tremendous amount of money towards all sorts of candidates across the country. What's interesting and what's historic and what we have to give kudos to President Trump for is that this election cycle has the largest number of Muslims who are running for office on all levels across the country. There are it's unbelievable. There's so many Muslims across the country that have said, you know what, I'm going to come out and get my voice heard, and I'm going to be the one that's going to speak for my community. Because for too long, for far too long, our community has been marginalized. Our community has not spoken out. Our community has not actually had their voice heard. So we give kudos and we congratulate all those people that have said, I'm going to come out and support my community. I'm going to come out and represent my community. And you can only do that here in America, or you can only do that in a free democracy. And we really appreciate those American Muslims that said, I'm going to come forward. Whether they win or lose, that's not, I mean, obviously it hurts if they lose, but it's the fact that they came forward. And
Right.
for the rest of you that are watching, this means that you also need to come forward and support our community to continue to do this work.
Right, right. I mean, it's getting involved and breaking that glass ceiling. You know, maybe the first American Muslim running for this particular seat may not have won, but you know what? At least it was done. That there's a precedent was set that it can be done. It's just a matter of reviewing what tactics were enacted and
Right.
just do better next time.
And a perfect example, even though it was in during this election cycle,
Mm,
but our
mm.
friend Abdul Sayyid, right,
I
Dr.
was
Abdul
thinking of
Sayyid,
him exactly. Yeah.
right, he ran for governor, even though he lost, even though we wanted him to win. But you know what? He broke that taboo or that notion that
Mm,
a person named Abdurrahman, right, a Egyptian American, can run for one of the highest positions in the country,
mm.
and he could have won, right? So, and he's still young, and he's probably gonna run again. I hope he runs again, and he could be one of our first Muslim governors, if not him, someone else. So you said it perfectly, which is that even if you don't win, you are breaking that ceiling so that the rest of the community can stand on your shoulders to
Mm.
actually make the difference.
Right, and it's not just also running to for that glass, breaking that glass ceiling, but it's also bringing the issues that you feel are important. That as a candidate, I want this is going to be my platform, and if I don't win, you know what? Maybe I will pressure the. I'll get enough. I'll get enough. I'll reach a breaking point among the people that the people will demand from the candidate of that party to say, you know what, this needs to be on your platform, the candidate of this party. We need to make sure that this is addressed.
Right. This is that's absolutely true. Um, you had that with the current election. If
Mm,
you didn't know, the $15 minimum wage was set by certain progressives, and now
mm,
it's adopted in the mainstream Democratic platform. And
mm,
that was because a candidate that wanted to push for it didn't win, but that was something that the establishment compromised with that particular candidate.
mm,
Now it is one of those platforms that the Democratic ticket is running on. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the work that MLFA does. You got to take a look at it. Some of the cases that we fight, we don't win. In fact, the person ends up going to jail, or we don't get the outcome that we want. But the difference is that we pushed back. The difference is that we held our ground. That now, the next time something like this were to happen, the government or the people in power, the people in authority, are not just going to try to bum rush through or get a policy through without thinking through the Constitution, without thinking through the whole process. If there's due process, if there is rule of law, then obviously we don't have any problem with that. However, if we don't speak truth to power, if we don't get ourselves represented,
Mhm.
then what we're going to have is, as they say, if you are not on the table, you're on the menu. So
Mhm.
today we want to be in the table, we want to have the conversation, we don't want to be on the menu.
Correct, correct. We want to organize ourselves with established principles so that we get ourselves at the table, and we come from a position of respect and dignity, and that our issues and voices and concerns are heard. Which brings me to my next question, Abdullah. American Muslims have many issues that they want elected officials to address, ranging from discrimination here at home to foreign policy. Can you, one, shed some light as to what are some of these issues? And two, I would like your personal opinion. What which of these issues do you think should be our community's top priorities to press elected officials to address?
I'm going to play what our newly appointed Supreme Court judge, Amy, what's her last name? But Amy, you know who I'm talking about, Judge Amy.
All right,
I forgot her last name.
that's okay.
I've been busy all day. I've been reading and doing a whole bunch of other work today. So I
Sure.
apologize for having this uh, forgetting her last name. But the newly elected, or sorry, selected, appointed Supreme Court judge, she said she's going to hold her opinion. I'm not going to answer that question because
Okay.
to me it's not a fair or even honest response,
Mhm.
whether my personal opinion matters or not, because our community, um, it's something that people neglect or people are maybe aloof to, is from one point of the country to the other point of the country. If you go from New York to California, or if you go from Illinois to Texas, and everything in between, we have a masjid in every single state, right? We
Mhm.
have a masjid in every single state. We have a masjid virtually in a major city. There's at least several masajid in all the major cities across the
Mhm.
country,
Right.
and all those masajid are packed on Friday, even during COVID, right?
Mhm.
What does that tell you? That tells you that our community is diverse. You have people from Nigeria, you have people from the Arab world, the Asian world. You have Muslims from Europe, South America. You have Muslims from all backgrounds. You have Muslims who reverted back. You have Muslims that have been living here for generations. To say that there's one singular issue that Muslims should care about, it's to me would be not a honest answer. From my travels, Alhamdulillah, with the work that MLFA does, we get to travel, right?
Mhm.
Due to COVID, we're not traveling,
Right.
but I've told this to one of our donors. I was having a conversation with on Saturday. Subhanallah, in the month of Ramadan, I prayed witr 5 different ways on 5 different nights, right?
Mhm.
Visiting various different communities. So we have difference, and this is what makes our community so blessed and so unique, that we have all those differences, but what unites us is our faith. But when it comes to the politics, we're all completely all over the map. Uh,
Mhm.
you would think that there are certain people that believe that Muslims are all Democrats. That's not the case. There's so
Mhm.
many Republican Muslims. You
Mhm.
would think that Muslims are all supporting one candidate or another. Muslims are anti-Trump or pro-Biden. That is not the case. There are
Mhm.
many Muslims who are actually supporting the current president. There are many Muslims who are not supporting the incumbent. I'm sorry, the president, vice president Biden, uh, on number of reasons. Right, one is because of foreign policy. But that's not the only reason. Many because of the economy, because of COVID, because of all sorts of issues. So if we there is this stigma within our community, or I think gets fed to us, which is that the number one issue should be Palestine or should be something else. That's not the case, because again, for us, I believe, or in my observation, we are so diverse. We have so many backgrounds. We have so many issues. There are a number of Muslims who are refugees that don't even speak English. There are a number of Muslims who are, been here for generations. The only language, only country they only know is America, and English is their mother tongue and only tongue. So it's so diverse, right? So you can't claim that those two people or anything and everything amongst these people we're going to have one particular issue. However, with that said, what I would say is looking at the polls, looking at the um, reports that are coming out, the issue that Muslims are dealing with, in my opinion, are the economy and what's happening with the health crisis, which is COVID. These two factors, these two issues are huge factors in what's going to happen with the election tonight, inshallah.
Mhm. Yeah, inshallah. Yeah, I mean, like you beautifully said. I mean, it's. I hear so many different opinions out there that, that Muslims need to be behind this, to be the number one priority, or they need to be behind this issue, number one priority. But like you said, our the walks of life that you see in the Muslim community are as diverse as America itself. You have every skin color, every there's so many different languages and cultures and backgrounds and concerns and interests, and it just
I want to add there.
yeah.
Subhanallah, I was feeling sad for a little bit
Hmm.
when I could not say that I've met a Native American Muslim, right?
Hmm.
And I'll tell you this: I met your dad and Brother Khalil on the same flight,
Hmm.
and then I met a Native American Muslim, and his wife is a Muslim or Muslima, right? His tribe is now becoming Muslim, and
MashaAllah. Wow.
so what I just wanted to add to that, which is that you have people. I actually have his picture on my Instagram and on Facebook. Uh, I thought I was like the guy's Bengali, but he's not. He's Native American. So
Mm.
Mr. Columbus did make a mistake by confusing us too. So uh,
Six
so
centuries later, and we're still calling Native Americans the wrong
Indians.
title.
uh, and what's interesting is that Columbus did go for the spices in the Bengal
And-
area.
right.
So uh, what I'm trying to get at is that we are extremely diverse, and that is very narrow-minded, and oftentimes very not we're not being critical of our community and not seeing
Mm.
that diversity. And subhanallah, if you look at Dallas alone, because you're here, I'm here, this is my adopted home, and we see the huge disparity in the economy and the education in overall the way we are, especially if you look at the various different masajid and the communities. Uh, it's not as segregated as in other parts of the country or
Mhm.
other places. Whereas, for the most part, we're not a ethnic-based masjid.
Mhm.
Whereas, in other parts, especially in New York and Detroit,
Mhm.
maybe in LA, but not that many. But in some areas, like, hey, this is a Pakistani masjid, Bangladeshi masjid, this is Yemeni masjid, this is Egyptian masjid. You don't have that in Dallas for
Mhm.
the most part. You have a city or a town-based masjid, like
Mhm.
INT is the Richardson Masjid, or Epic is the East Plano Masjid, and Plano Masjid is the West Plano Masjid. So
Mhm.
Valley Ranch, so you don't have that here in Dallas, but what you do have is the fact that these major masajid that I did mention, they're very affluent, right? Then you have Masjid al Islam, which is not that affluent. Then you have other now smaller masajid where you have our refugee brothers and sisters who are there. So uh, we often look at what the affluent masjids are doing and base our politics on that, and not look at what our not that well off communities are doing. So we don't look at both perspectives. And I think as a community we need to change that assumption of ours. And I think it all changed as we become more and more intelligent. And I'm talking about intelligent in regards to politics, because as you get involved in it, again, I'm not a politician, I'm not involved in politics, so this is just my observation of it, being traveling around the country and seeing what our communities have done. So I'm speaking from that perspective and from that experience.
Mm,
But I think that our community, as it becomes more and more involved in politics, it will become that much more mature.
yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's shift gears and talk about the nature of the work that MLFA funds. And the reason I want to bring that up right after the comment you just made is, that you seem like the unifying factor between all the different Muslim communities around the country, regardless of their backgrounds, be it home country origin or language or culture or ethnicity or all these other things, is the fact that the common denominator is Muslim, right? And and the work that Muslim Legal Fund of America we do is that we take on cases where Muslims are treated differently because of their religious identity or national origin, and background. So let's shift gears and talk about the nature of the work that we do. The Law Center MLFA grant funds, the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America, is a First Amendment law center. The First Amendment includes freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and assembly. So it is vital to the American Muslim community. If the Constitution guarantees these rights for all Americans, why is it important to fund legal work if we have rule of law?
So eh, I'm trying to figure out how to answer your question in a very quick way,
Mm,
but it's one of the reasons why it's important is if you don't exercise your right, your rights will be taken away.
mm,
It's going to be trampled upon, especially the administrations, regardless of whether it's the blue administration or red administration. They're all the same, unfortunately. And that is that if you don't exercise your rights will be taken away. You have to demand, you have to make sure those rights are there to be protected. You have to make sure your rights are protected. And that's one of the reasons why MLFA has been fighting so hard for the last 18 years, over 18 years, to make
mm,
sure that our brothers and sisters, our communities, our leaders, our activists get the rights that they deserve. We make sure that again we're not trying to say, hey, this person's innocent, get them out. No, what we are trying to make sure is that due process is followed,
mhm,
making sure that they have the best legal representation that's possible. We make sure that individuals' rights are not trampled upon. Because one of the things that we need to realize is that when a jury comes out and says the foreman speaks, or a forewoman speaks and says that we find the defendant not guilty, uh, they don't say we find the defendant innocent. You're innocent until proven guilty, right? And one of the things that we need to realize is that the work that we do actually make sure that we can have our freedom, make sure that we can actually have our constitutional right uh, the way we have it. Because if we don't exercise it, if we don't hold truth to power, if we don't speak truth to power, then it's going to be taken away. Because it's like one of those things that if you don't work on it, it's lost.
mm. Yeah, that's a very interesting point there. So, back to freedom of religion, or to be more precise, religious persecution is one of the main reasons that this country was founded. The founding fathers explicitly stated that a person who practices any or no faith can and has the full right and freedom to practice their faith and to the level that they wish to practice, in going so far as to mention Mohammedanism i.e., Islam, and Catholicism as examples of religions they can practice. Yet there are efforts pushing this idea that Islam is not a religion but an ideology, and as such does not have the protection of the First Amendment. Why do you think it is in the water supply that Islam is not a religion?
That is a very good question. I really appreciate that question. Um, so, not to go super philosophical here,
Mm-hmm.
but one thing that I'll say, and this is my personal opinion, the reason why I think that this is happening is because actually, let me take a step back and I'll tell you what's going on with elections today. Uh, it's 5:32 right now in Dallas. So in the East Coast is 6:32. We got another hour and a half or so until the election is called. And what's interesting is that non-college going white men are the ones that are going to be voting for Trump, right? They're the ones that are going to be electing Mr. Trump into office.
Mm-hmm.
That's what all the polls say. If they don't come out and vote today, he's not going to be president, right? Again, this is not an endorsement for either candidate. This is just a fact that are being shared across the news outlets. The
Mm-hmm.
reason why I say that is that a person that is not educated, again, I'm not trying to bash anyone or dismiss anyone's criteria, level of intelligence, but the point is that if you're not educated about a certain topic, about the Constitution, if you're not educated about the way this country is or runs, then you're going to make up outlandish claims.
Mm-hmm.
This country was founded, as you mentioned over and over, on freedom of religion. This country is founded on freedom of religion. The freedom for you to practice, for me to practice Islam, for me to say Allahu Akbar, for me to practice my deen, for me to make dua, for me to pray, is as American as apple pie, right? Apple pie is American. There's nothing more American, maybe the bald eagle, right? But for me to say Allahu Akbar, it is as American as apple pie. And the problem is that most people that are in these positions, they play to hysteria, they play to people's ignorance, they
Mm-hmm.
don't play to people's intelligence. And that is where you and I come in, which is, again, from a religious perspective, it is ballighu anni wal ayah, right? Whatever, even if it's an ayah, go out and convey it, go give dawah to people. But from a social and apolitical perspective, it's about making sure that we know who our demographics are, making sure that we go out and start doing social activities. Again, I can speak to this from myself. After COVID hit, many communities across the country, many Muslim communities across the country have done their best to go out and serve the community. I think here in America, 10% of the physicians are Muslim. So Muslim doctors did that much amount of dawah work. Could they have done better? Perhaps if we were a bit more organized. But I think that in itself, made a huge difference. Over
Mm-hmm.
232,000 people died due to COVID. Over 9 million people have been infected by this, travesty and tragedy. And people's lives have been changed and people's lives have been impacted. So, I think that we as American Muslims need to rethink and re-evaluate the way we are trying to get to. And it gets back to the whole issue, which is that where are we aligned other than our Islam, other than, again, even in Islam, right? As I mentioned to you, I prayed with it in 5 different ways, in 5 different nights, in 5 different communities. What unifies us, and that is just the fact that we're Muslim. And perhaps sometimes we may not want to look at the differences, but we want to look at what makes us the same. And we may want to get together on our common principle of worshiping Allah, common principle of following the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu, common principle of loving peace, loving justice, making sure that our constitutional rights are upheld, making sure that we're able to raise our children in the way we feel Islam allows us or asks us to raise our children. So based on those principles, I think we should unite as a community, and obviously build coalitions with our Christian neighbors, with the Jewish neighbors, with our Sikh and Hindu and Buddhist and all these other even atheists and agnostic communities that are out there. So we need to build coalitions that want to unite and make America our home and make the best place that we can live in.
Yeah. So, um, so I mean that's a very well-rounded answer. But can maybe if you could speak directly to the question that I had about why is it in the water supply that people would say that Islam is not a religion, therefore it's not protected by the First Amendment. You started talking about lack of education, and hysteria is built on is based on those ideas. Is that what you were possibly were you was that what you were alluding to?
I see I'm being put on the hot seat. So, okay.
Just
Uh,
a little bit.
yeah, okay. No problem. So, not to make a long answer because it's gonna get a little bit complicated in my,
Okay.
at least for me, it gets complicated
Okay.
because I've asked that question to myself, why, right? If you know the
Mm,
answer, why are you doing this? Because again, it's like if you look at the Christian teachings, if you look at the biblical teachings, to be more specific, you have to give alms, you have to care for the poor. That's what
right.
Jesus Christ did. that's
Right.
what that's what Christianity is about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to a Christian school. I was educated by Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to the priests on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's what it was about, right? Yet you have individuals on certain political parties that say that they uphold these values, yet they don't want to give welfare, yet they don't want to give shelter, yet they don't want to give food stamps, and say that, hey, they're going to get deprived of knowing how the knowing the ability to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason why I believe is because it's a political tactic to get into power.
Mm-hmm.
It's to misinform, misdirect, and it's another way of trying to get into power. If you can make Muslims the unknown, the Muslims the other, the Muslims the boogeyman, then it gives these certain political parties the opportunity to fight against someone and uh, put forth or push forth their agenda. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, in the 80s, it was the Russians, right? Prior to what Islam is right now, right? It was the Cold War. Before that, it was the Nazis and communism and Marxism. Right now, it's Islam that's the boogeyman. That, hey, we need to say, hey, Islam is this, Islam is that. Islam is going to take your children away. Islam is going to do this or that to you.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that if America is a secular nation, America, and for our viewers, this is a very sticky subject as well, because
Mm-hmm.
from an international perspective, we don't really comment on what happens internationally. But I want to explain, when we say secular nation, uh, there are unique terms that only mean certain things only in America.
Right.
I had a 4-hour conversation on the word racism, on
Right.
how racism means different in America versus anywhere else. So we don't have 4 hours to explain this, but in America, what secularism means is truly separation of church and state. You can practice Islam, you can practice agnosticism, you can practice Christianity, Judaism, Satanism, whatever you want to practice, that's not a problem. But that does not mean that you can enforce your faith on someone else. However, what
Mm-hmm.
is interesting about America that is not the same with secularism in other parts of the world is that, let's say, for instance, you practice Eid on a state ground, right, or
Mm-hmm.
Christmas. If you give all the other religions that same opportunity, it's completely halal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Completely legal, right? You can
Halal.
practice, you can practice it, no problem, because you're not giving one religion preference over another.
Correct.
Whereas that's not the case in other parts of the world, right?
Right.
In Islam, I'm sorry, in America, if I were to wear my kufi and become the president or the mayor or the governor of a particular city, state, or I can't be the president of the country, but let's say you became the president of the country and you decided to only wear the kufi and the thobe. That's perfectly acceptable, because in our understanding of the way our government works, our constitution works, it gives you that right. Now, if you become uh, a, if you're representing the government, then perhaps there might be some difference. There might be a different
Decorum
yeah,
requirements,
decorum.
maybe.
Yeah. So if you look at Ilhan Omar, right, I believe Congress changed the law to say no, she can wear the hijab in Congress,
Hmm.
right? And it's a perfect example where separation of church and state is very acceptable. That's not the case in other parts of the country. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
other parts of the world.
Right.
So what's interesting, and the reason to answer your original question, one of the reasons why Islam has been so vilified, it
Hmm.
goes back to the 70s, right? Which is this clash of civilizations that Samuel Huntington wrote about, how Islam is going to be the new enemy, Islam is this and that. And it goes back into the economics aspects of it. It goes
Hmm.
back to the sociology and ideology, war, ideological war.
Hmm.
But for an average American Muslim, my friend, forget all that, right? It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter. What
Right.
matters is you practice you. You practice being the best American that you can be. You practice being the best Muslim that you can be. And when you can do that, regardless of whether you're in the South, whether you're in the North, East, and West, you will change your town. My friends, I'll tell you this again. You got me excited now. I actually got a donation slip from one of our uh, I donated to one of our donors' causes. He's in the South, right? He's in Tennessee, right? I'm not going to mention specifically which town, but Tennessee is usually very racist, right? Very racist. But he's making changes. He's making changes to his hometown,
Hmm.
and he's making phenomenal changes. He's making impact. People are congratulating him. The Christians, the Jews, and everyone in that community that knows who he is, they're uplifting him. I'm gonna be I won't be surprised if he all of a sudden runs for office. Right, he's making a huge difference in his community. He's making a huge impact. He has pictures with the Titans. So it's just amazing. And all he's doing is what? He's practicing his faith. He's
Hmm.
practicing being him.
Hmm.
Now, when someone who's ignorant, someone that's never met a Muslim or claims they've never met a Muslim and comes out and says something, guess what? What's going to happen? You're going to have so many non-Muslims who are his friend kind of come out and start saying, hold on a second, buddy, take a step back. It's like what happened with the Muslim ban with the airport situation.
Hmm.
I say this all the time, and I'm pretty sure you say it as well, which is that when Mr. Trump enacted the Muslim ban, we didn't expect thousands and thousands and thousands of non-Muslims to come out and protest in the airports. Right?
Hmm.
Those are Muslims that were there. Right? It was non-Muslims that came out and said, we're not going to have this. We're going to stand with our fellow Americans." So you have the ignorant aspect of it, and with the I want to bring this up again, which is one thing that happened that we want to say, and it addresses your question, which is that the third time that President Trump tried to enact the Muslim ban, it did get stuck with the Supreme Court, and they did decide to uphold the Muslim ban. But in upholding it, there's also some phenomenal news there, which is that they said Islam is a faith, Islam is a religion. We're not gonna, make a claim that say that, oh, Islam is not this and that. No, 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 no. Get that out of here, right? They basically threw it out and said Islam is a religion. So anyone that claims Islam isn't, well, the highest court in the land stated Islam is a religion. So
Hmm.
you can, have your conversations somewhere else, because
Right.
Islam is a religion and we're to stay. We are at us practicing Islam is as I said, American as American pie, so or apple pie.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate. I'm sorry to put you in the hot seat like that, but I was hoping to get to that point quicker. Usually,
Sorry.
but I give myself the blame on that. But let's move on to the next point about the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. And freedom of speech is a hot button issue in our community these days. We're not going to get into why because we don't comment on international issues, but nonetheless, as far as here at home in America is concerned, as best as you can you quickly explain to the audience what freedom of speech is and what it isn't, and the limit freedom of speech has, if any, just to clarify the next couple of questions I'm going to ask about freedom of speech, because there seems to be a misconception about what freedom of speech is and isn't, I mean, among our community.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, right?
You're
So
not a
I
lawyer,
can't.
not a First Amendment lawyer. I understand that.
Right. So I can't give you a technical. I won't give you a technical
Right.
definition or answer, right?
Right.
Uh, but what I'll tell you is this. What I understand is this. You have the right to say whatever you want to say, right? Uh, but if you cry fire,
Mhm,
according to the Supreme Court, in
mhm,
a crowded theater, you are going to get arrested because you
mhm,
put people in danger. I'm going to quote our one of my favorite boxers, one of my favorite boxers, Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? All their plan goes away. You can say whatever you want to say,
mhm.
but remember, there's going to be consequences.
Right.
So you have freedom of speech. There's free speech in America, but there's consequences. If you threaten someone, there's consequences. Um, so the difference is that what freedom of speech allows you to do, there's a difference between hate speech, inciting violence,
Mhm,
making sure that I think what you're alluding to is what's the difference between hate speech versus freedom of speech versus uh,
provocative speech.
provocative. Well, not provocative,
Well,
but more
meaning speech that is
incitement.
intended, yeah, incitement. That's probably what I'm after. That's actually what I'm trying to say. Yes, that
Right.
speech that is meant to incite a reaction out of you.
Right. So there's difference of opinion. I'm not difference of opinion, but there's differences there. So it depends on which speech you're talking about and what exactly you want me to talk about from that aspect of it. But from a legal perspective, I'm not an attorney to give you a legal definition. I can
Right.
give you I can give you a personal opinion.
Mhm,
And again, like I said, freedom of free speech in America is
mhm.
different than free speech anywhere else in the world.
Right. I think maybe we need to save that kind of question for one of the attorneys that we have at the law center, who's an
Sure.
expert on the subject. Um, but speaking to the issue that we're talking about was as far as the elections and representation and issues that we care about, especially our community as Muslims. When one thing we find ourselves in a situation of that the offended party can exercise that the offended party can exercise their freedom of speech to express their being offended and outraged, just because the offenders are granted freedom of speech does not mean the offended have to be quiet and take it.
I think before taking going into that direction,
Mhm.
I want to go into the history aspect of it, right?
Okay.
Which is that again, like you said, we have phenomenal attorneys, experts. These are the guys and gals that are studying this day in and day out, and they're the ones that are, um, studying the constitutional aspects of it and the
Hmm.
legal aspects of it. But from a historical perspective,
Hmm.
free speech literally means that you have the right to criticize your government. You have the right
Hmm.
to not fear because you made a criticism against Trump, made a criticism against Biden, that you're going to be jailed, right?
Hmm.
That's what it's actually talking about. Now, in America and other parts of the world, I'm not sure where it stands, but there are certain blasphemy laws that's out there. Uh, you can provoke people all you want, but again,
Hmm.
if you incite violence, if you incite a crime, that like the Supreme Court said, you have the right to free speech, but you cannot call fire in a crowded theater. you are
Correct.
putting people in danger. So
Correct.
if you have a specific question in regards to that, I think that would be better to answer.
Okay. So I guess the question. So the question that I want to come up with, or that I want to ask, is the issue. So the issue of free speech comes. It seems to come up again and again with our community. The double standard when talking about our issues, that other groups have made it socially unacceptable to have hateful speech made about them, even though that hateful speech continues to come up for other groups, right? But it is recognized that it is socially unacceptable to have that hateful speech made about them. But when Islamophobic speech is said, that speech is actively defended by the media and world leaders using free speech as the free get out of jail card. So what steps can
Well, let me stop you for a second
okay,
and address this issue.
okay,
I can't speak to the world, right? I can't speak
right,
to you what the world can do, because that's not we can't do anything about that. It's
sure,
not like we can do anything about here in America either. But what we can say is based on our experiences here in America, right? If you're anti-Semitic, right, there's rules against that. If you violate certain principles within of certain Christian tenets, there's rules against that.
hmm
We just have not put or built enough political power for us to hold people accountable for
hmm
being Islamophobic. So let's
exactly.
say, for
That was the
instance,
question that I was about to ask. Is that how
so
can we set it up so that
it's simple.
Islam? That's it.
It's simple. As Mike Tyson said, you have a plan until you get punched in the face. So in this case, if an official or a person that is in power says certain things that we don't like, says
Mhm,
certain things that are against our values and against our community, we fire them. We basically get them out of office in two ways. One is we bring someone else up and try to get them. The other way is that whoever their opponent is, we fund their campaign. We give them all the support that they need,
mhm,
and that you will see people turning their tune very very easily and very very quickly, because
mhm,
then they're like, okay, these Muslims actually have power, and people would actually come out and vote. I mean, what's interesting is that in the last 30 years, American Muslims have changed their perception of getting involved and getting engaged in the political sphere. Um, Islam is not new to America, and Muslims are not new in America, right? We just have been late in getting involved in politics. We found it something that was not tasteful for us to get involved. So now we've been scapegoated on many different issues. Um, you know, I hate to say this, but the reality is that whenever a mass shooting happens, whenever some sort of crime happens, if you are a Muslim, it's automatically an act of terrorism, right?
mhm,
If you are a black, it's a gang violence or gang related, a thug or something. If you are Hispanic or Latino, it's a crime or some sort of other aspect of it. And if you are a Caucasian, it seems to be always, unfortunately, that's what the media is saying, that it's something to do. They had it's a lone wolf issue, or it's that they had a mental problem, or they had some other issues. That's the reason why they did it. Whereas, like, if you are black, if you're Arab or Desi or any sort of other pigmentation, you
mhm,
don't have a mental problem. You actually are, you, the rest of us that are not committing crime seems to have the mental problem that we are gonna be committing that crime. So that's the mentality that certain people have, and when they
right,
have those attitudes, we have not held their feet to the fire. We have not fired them. We have not said this is not acceptable.
right,
And when we start doing that, and that is today, right? By voting these people in and out of office. And when they say negative things about Muslims, when they say negative things about minority communities, when they say or do things that are harmful to our communities, we need to get them out of office and elect people into office that are going to speak the way we want them to speak. And if
Mhm.
they don't, we fire them as well. And that's how our democracy works.
Very, very well put. Couldn't have said it better myself, so I won't. I have one more question for you, Brother Abdullah, that addresses the type of legal work that MLFA funds. There's a common rhetoric among American Muslims that before 9/11, everything was normal. To quote the comedian and political commentator Dean Abdullah, before 9/11, I was white. After 9/11, I was a Muslim. But we find that the government had used tactics that targeted our community, such as surveillance, wiretapping, secret evidence on several Muslim individuals and organizations. Some early clients of MLFA were the victims of these tactics, and it seems to me that 9/11 only expedited and heightened legal persecution of Muslims in America. Uh,
I uh, I I hate your question. Thank you so much for asking this question because I don't want to. I really don't want to answer this question. But
okay,
now that you put me in the hot seat, I got to answer
I'm
this
not gonna.
question.
Well, I'm not gonna make you, so it's up to you.
Well, you said it, so I gotta now answer it. Otherwise, it's not gonna be fair to your show. Uh, for me, right, 9/11 did not change my world.
Mhm,
I know this might sound very weird and controversial or um, outlandish. For me, it's exactly the same. Yeah, it's another phenomenon. It's another issue that happened because prior to 9/11, I faced discrimination. Post 9/11, I faced discrimination. I was brown before 9/11. I'm brown after 9/11. If you ask any African American, if you ask any black person, did 9/11 change their lives? No, it's the same. I was being frisked. I was being stopped. I was being bullied before 9/11. The same thing happened after 9/11. This is just my story, right? So for the greater American Muslim community, perhaps they, as you mentioned, that it sped up the process, but our community was a target prior to that. Uh,
mhm,
Prior to 9/11. And like I said, it goes back to the whole Samuel Huntington's situation, which is the class article, Clash of Civilizations. It's a Harvard publication that was written, I believe, in the 1970s.
mhm,
This was bound to happen here in America.
mhm,
America, unfortunately, the way our world runs is that it always needs an enemy, right? We're always trying to blame another country, China, Russia,
mhm,
Islam, right? It's an ideology. It's a battle of ideologies, a battle of thought, battle of wits. So for us, in my opinion, for American Muslims, we were gonna be in this situation whether 9/11 happened or not, right? If you, it may sound like it's a conspiracy theory, but in certain circles, they believe that some of the principles that were going to be applied, aka the Patriot Act, it was just going through it, and John Ashcroft had an excuse to have 9/11, like, hey, look, we need to apply it already, because the reality of the fact is that the Patriot Act was already there even prior to 2001. It was
mhm,
already implemented, but now it was fully forced, and the ability for the government to spy on your finances and your medical information and your phones and any other things without actually having a judge to sign off on being able to look through your information, which is again a violation of your constitution, violation of our principles of this country, which is one of those concepts, which is the right to having privacy. So
mhm,
I believe that it was going to happen regardless, and whether 9/11 happened or not, whether that tragedy happened or not, and that's something that happened. Number one. Number two is that oftentimes what we act as if is that we're not victims. We act as if like we are just defending ourselves. No, my friend. I was in New York. I saw the fires. Right. I am a victim of 9/11. Many of our friends and families have been impacted. Over 600 families that the Muslim community knows have been impacted.
Mhm.
Hundreds and thousands of people have been displaced, or had to deal with issues. There are people that I know personally who was supposed to go to the towers that day, but one reason or another they didn't go. So for us, being from New York, for some people that were there that day, for us, it's another day in our lives. But for us, I believe we need to take take that tragedy and grow from it,
Mhm.
learn from it. And the thing that we should learn from it is that if we don't get involved, if we don't get involved with our politics, with our community, with our society, we're going to be in on the menu. We're going to be scapegoated. We're going to be blamed for something that we had nothing to do with, for
Right.
something that we were not responsible for, something that we were not involved in. We are Americans, right? What 9/11 tried to do, or people that were in power tried to do, was that they try to scapegoat us. They try to blame us to be the other. And in
Mhm.
fact, we are not the other. We are America. This is our home. We're not going anywhere. And because we're not going anywhere, now from a religious perspective, we have a responsibility to this society. We have a responsibility to our community. We have a responsibility to our friends and family, to our neighbors, because the Prophet ﷺ said that the 40 neighbors that you have around you, they have a responsibility. You have a responsibility over them. So
Mhm. Well,
and the
they
Prophet
have a
ﷺ,
they have a right over us.
they
We have
have a
responsibility to them. Yeah.
right. And the Prophet ﷺ did not say those neighbors have to be Muslim, right? He
Mhm.
didn't say those neighbors have to be Muslim. So are we doing our part? And election cycle is getting involved, making sure that our neighbors are taken care of. And from the Sunnah, from the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, we'll look at a simple thing, which is that if my belly is full and my neighbor's belly is empty, there is no way that the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be upon us. And if there's no rahmah, there's no Jannah. And our ultimate goal is Jannah. And for
Mhm.
us to go into Jannah, we need to care for our neighbors, we need to care for our society, we need to care for our community. Because if you live in this country and you are a citizen and you have a blue passport, you're not going to go anywhere. This is your country. And you need to do your part, and that is get the vote out. It's 7 o'clock in the East Coast, 6 o'clock here in Dallas. And I believe it's 4 o'clock in West Coast. And if you have not voted, make sure you go vote. You can still stand in the lines and make sure that you get your vote out.
Right. And just to get the point home, let's just put it on the screen right now. There are, if you're on the East Coast, the polls, it's at 7 o'clock on the East Coast right now. Depending on where you are, the polls may be closing, or you have another hour. Here in Dallas, Texas, the polls are open. At least in Dallas, for the most part, my knowledge is that they are open until 7 o'clock. You have another hour to get to them. Mountain Time, Pacific Time, you still have a couple of hours. Get to it. If you have not gone out and casted your vote, if you have not fulfilled your civic responsibility and exercised your constitutional right to make your voice heard, this is the time right now. You don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and say, "I wish I did." Right? We want to have you want to do it now. Shaitan's greatest trick is procrastinating you to until it's too late. That's it's the oldest trick in his handbook. Um,
Right.
So, Abdullah, we already passed the 1 hour mark. So, on this historic night, I want to ask one more question before we close, which is, what is the role voting has on the civil rights of American Muslims?
What is the role that voting has on the civil rights of American Muslims?
Mhm.
It has so much. Like I said, perhaps the audience might have missed it, but this election cycle is happening when the census is happening,
Mhm.
right? So that means that districting is going to be taking place. If you have not, well, I'm not sure about the ruling right now, but census was taken. When that was happening, you needed to put down the fact that you're a Muslim. get your voice out there, get your vote, get your representation out there. So right now, whoever is going to be our elected officials, local, state, and federal level, they are going to put certain policies out there that's going to be beneficial to our community. And if you don't have those right candidates out there, then they are going to make it difficult for our community,
Mm,
and it's going to make our jobs a little bit more harder, right? But we're going to still keep on fighting regardless of who wins tonight, whether it's the blue party or the red party,
mm,
we still have a lot of work to do. There's a
mhm,
lot of constitutional rights. A lot of our brothers and sisters who are still in jail, right? There are certain individuals who are actually innocent that have been in jail for decades, and we're fighting to get them out. There
mm,
are individuals that are in there without proper representation. There are Muslims that are there without uh, getting their rights fulfilled. So
mm.
whether whoever wins tonight, it's we hope for the best. We hope that the candidate that wins helps the Muslim community. We hope that the candidate that wins upholds the Constitution, makes it easy for our community to fulfill our faith and live in America in a peaceful and tranquil way, right? But at the same time, we know that regardless of who wins, there's still policies that have been enacted that violates our constitutional rights, violates our core principles in our society, and we need to hold them accountable for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, tonight America decides, right? It all comes down to who shows up. Whoever shows, those who show up make the decisions, and those who have cast their vote, they are a part of that decision-making process, and those were the voices that were heard, and that's how the decision will be made, inshallah. So, Abdullah, before we close, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, now if you have casted your vote, thank you so much. May Allah accept your intentions. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides our community. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for our community. Because brothers and sisters, one thing that you need to realize and you need to see is that we have so many issues that are arising as our community keeps on growing, which is a blessing. But we need to come forward. If you are, if you have the ability, if you have the capability, you should think about running for office. You should think about running for PTA officer or in your become an officer within your HOA, become an officer with your local board. Get involved. Start volunteering for different candidates. Start speaking to your candidates. Start inviting them to your community. Start inviting them to your home. Get involved. I mean, well, maybe not now after COVID. Uh, we really think that you should get involved with your political system or with your political parties, with your political groups, and that makes our jobs easier.
Mhm.
Because, subhanAllah, we are standing on the shoulders of giants within the civil rights community.
Mm.
And within MLFA, let's, for instance, I'd like to thank, our one of our co-founders, Brother Khalil, our current executive director, the board, and so many others that have helped us to get where we are. And similarly with our community, we are where we are because of the sacrifice and efforts of the people that came before us. So if you don't do your part now, what is the next generation going to say? Or how can the next generation, what can we expect from the next generation? We need to help them, elevate them, and push them forward. So again, I really appreciate you all watching this. And Ayman, thank you so much for inviting me to tonight's program. I had some fun, and I had to, bust your chops as well.
That's
Thank you.
okay. I had fun tonight too. Jazakallah khair for taking the time. I know you're very busy, taking the time away from your family during this after hours to inshallah encourage people to go rock the vote, to get their vote out, to help be part of the decision making process that our country is going through tonight. That that America will decide who our its leaders are going to be for the next term, and this is the time for that the decision is being made. So, to our viewers, the Constitutional Law Center in America, the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America, which is funded by a grant fund by the Muslim Legal Fund of America, has about 100 open cases right now. We receive applications every day from people who are going through unjust challenges and obstacles, and you can help and support victims of injustice. Brothers and sisters, the time to act against oppression and persecution is now. You can click on the link below and make a donation, or you can donate on our website by visiting www.mlfa.org/give. You can also volunteer your time by going to volunteer.mlfa.org, and and you can help us that way. Brother Abdullah Mamun, I'd like to thank you for being our guest today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. To our viewers, join us here next time on MLFA's Facebook page and MLFA's YouTube page next week, Tuesday, November 10th, 5 p.m. Central. This is the show about justice. I'm Ayman Taleb. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to share this video and give your feedback. Have a good evening, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.